Hello and welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast, the channel for film reviews, discussions and everything in between. I'm Chris Garner, joined once again with my co-host George Aldridge, and today on our main show, if you've seen the title, we're going to be giving you our review. Well, it's sort of more of a discussion on the entire list of Pixar films in anticipation for the soon-to-be released Inside Out. We're going to skip our usual movie news section this week because if you've seen our previous video, we released our breakdown of all the news that came out at Comic-Con, and that pretty much took the place of the news this week, and it's a long video as well. Later on in the show, we're going to be bringing you another edition of Film Fights as well as our recommended movie. So today, we're just going to jump straight into reviewing all these Pixar films.
For anyone who's ever wondered what toys do when people aren't around.
Hey everybody, it's showtime!
Walt Disney Pictures invites you into a world where toys come to life.
To infinity and beyond!
Walt Disney Pictures presents the first ever computer animated motion picture.
We've got trouble!
This holiday season, take off on an adventure
This cannot be happening to me!
beyond imagination.
Sheriff, this is no time to panic. This is the perfect time to panic!
It's the story of two partners discovering what they're made of.
I'm okay! Catch this! I got it, Woody! Next stop, Andy! To infinity and beyond!
Toy Story.
1995, we get Toy Story 1, which was obviously the first ever Pixar movie, and real big game changer in the sort of line of animated films. It was the first, I believe, entirely CGI kids animated film we ever got.
It was the first ever one of every film ever put together, so it was pretty big in that term. And then I think, in all honesty, this is probably arguably the best Pixar film to date if you include the other two Toy Story films. So it's kind of not ironic, but the fact that the first one's the best one's a common saying, and even with Pixar 20 years later, it still is.
Oh yeah, I'll agree with that as well. And like Toy Story 2 and 3, and we'll get onto those later on, they obviously had the freedom to do a lot more stuff. Obviously the technology had advanced then, but the first one is such a big part of my childhood, and we've talked loads on Toy Story before. It's featured in 2 of our top 10 lists before, so we won't go into it as in depth as we have there. But the first one's such a classic. It's such a simple story, but that really showed that Pixar was going to become a force to be reckoned with in the animation and really film industry as well. Obviously the voice talents you get of Tom Hanks, you get Tim Allen, and all the other cast as well are fantastic. And you go back to Toy Story 1 and the animation does look a little dated, but I think it still holds up.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, whenever you watch it now, it's still great to watch, and you kind of pick up new things, but also it's just a natural classic where every single person you know has seen it, of all ages, they all love them. It's very hard to find people that dislike it. But the film itself still holds up because it's such an attachment. And you can look at it in some ways as well, where you look at the characters and obviously like the era itself. A lot of people still play with toys that are younger, so they can go watch this and they'll love it. They don't feel it's dated. And I think with animations, it's very hard for them to look dated, especially with the Pixar model.
Oh yeah, and I guess this point will become more prominent in our Toy Story 3 breakdown, but this came out at just the right time for our age group, so that when all the sequels came out, it was sort of a natural progression of our lives as well as the character of Andy. But yeah, I think this should definitely be a film that's introduced to any kid growing up, because I think they'll have that natural attachment to the characters and they'll be able to connect with it because they're of a toy playing age as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And also with these films, obviously they actually made toys of the Toy Story stuff, so that kind of made it even funner, because I remember I've still got a fair few of mine. But also, if you just look at the series as a whole very briefly, I think they kind of get better as they go along. Like there's no bad one, and they're all like perfect films in my eyes, and it's so like hard to pick a favourite.
Now let me tell you how things are supposed to work. The ants pick the food. The grasshoppers eat the food.
It's a bug-eat-bug world out there.
Someone could get hurt.
He's quite the motivational speaker, isn't he? Let's ride!
It's the same year after year. They come, they eat, they leave. That's our lot in life. It's not a lot, but it's our life.
I've got an idea. We can find bigger bugs to come here and fight.
Now, why didn't I think of that? Oh, because it's suicide.
What they needed was some help.
You're perfect!
What they got
Popcorn, stale popcorn!
was a bunch of clowns.
We're losing the audience! Get out there now!
They'll only laugh at me.
That's because you're a clown!
Circus bugs! I thought you were warriors.
Hey, cutie! Want to pollinate with a real bug?
So, being a ladybug automatically makes me a girl.
Christ, she's a guy!
We don't serve grasshoppers. For the colony and for oppressed bugs everywhere!
Hello there, girly bug.
Shoo fly, don't bother me.
A Bug's Life.
Then 3 years later, Pixar released their second film in their series, which was A Bug's Life, which came out. It was very weird because on exactly the same weekend that was released, Ants came out from DreamWorks as well. So it was bizarre that we had two Ant animated movies out at exactly the same time. I'm a bigger fan of Ants out of the two because that's a bit more adult and I think the humour's better in that. Bug's Life I found okay. I think I got into it more as a kid because obviously there was I think I had the PS1 game of it, and I loved the character of Hopper, played brilliantly by Kevin Spacey. He's probably my favourite thing in this film. But I think you put this in your top 5 animated films of all time list, so you probably have a bigger attachment to this than I do.
Yeah, I love the Bug's Life. I think when I was younger, them and Toy Story films were the main sort of animated films I'd watch. And I think with this, sorry, it's just too early. Don't just cut this.
Yeah, oh, don't worry.
I think with the Bug's Life film, I just preferred the characters in it, and I just loved like the flying circus act where it's just great fun, and I love what they do with the world where like there's no humanity, that it's all, you know, the bugs. But then it's when you get the little characters like the caterpillar is one of the funniest Pixar characters. I think he's always hilarious, even when I'm older and I see it. But then you can look at it, and obviously there's that big Pixar theory where they're all linked, and then Bug's Life's kind of one of the main ones, which is a mental theory. But I think whenever I've sat down and watched this, because I went years without seeing it, I think last year I saw it for the first time in at least like 5-6 years, and it was just so fun still. And it's just great. I mean, each character's their own, and I think it's unique, especially compared to the other Pixar films, because some of them, they've kind of got overlying themes and stuff, and in this one it's a bit different, which is what I like about it.
Yeah, and out of all the Pixar films, well, like these earlier ones, this is one they haven't actually gone back to, which is kind of interesting. I think there'd still be an audience for it, but I just don't know really where you could go with the story. It's a neat little self-contained story. And you're right about the characters. This is often the case with most of Pixar films. The supporting characters are just as strong as their main cast. And that's exactly the same in this. The whole circus troupe are brilliant, and they have that good chemistry. I can't remember the name of it because it's been ages since I've seen Pixar, but the ladybird bug in it is fantastic, is hilarious. And you're right, again, with the caterpillar Heimlich, brilliant, and he's still hilarious. And this was going to be a sort of running theme now with all the Pixar films, where John Ratzenberger, who voiced Ham in Toy Story, always plays a character in every Pixar movie.
Yeah, and I don't know if he has, but he is in. I think he's in basically all of them. It's hard to say because I haven't seen them all in a while, but he's got such a distinct voice that you can always tell it's him.
Yeah, and that I think Pixar have gone on record and said he's sort of their good luck charm for their films.
Oh, definitely, and also John Ratzenberger was in Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back. If you didn't know that,
I did not know this. Who did he play?
He plays one of the rebel soldiers on the Battle of Hoth. I think it's the one, you know, when they're like lying down.
Yeah,
It's the one with the moustache that's closest to the camera. So it's not important, but it's a kind of little cool
that's
thing
cool.
that he's like in Pixar in later life. But also with Bug's Life, one of the things I want to say is that it had one of my favourite credit scenes when it mixes with Toy Story a lot, and the way that Pixar started, they did it for a few films when it was younger, the company. They had the blooper reels, but they'd animate it, which I always thought was like funny at the time, and it kind of made you stay as well in the cinema.
Yeah, and then Pixar have kind of they haven't done it in all of their films, but it's always fun to see those things. It's sort of like a fun little breaking the fourth wall moment, and you obviously don't see it in context of the actual movie, but it is pretty funny how they do it, and they take the time to do that. And that comes up again in our third film in the series, which was Toy Story 2, which came out the following year in 1999.
He's stealing Woody. What? Somebody do something!
Woody was kidnapped.
Woody once risked his life to save me. I couldn't call myself his friend if I weren't willing to do the same.
I'm packing you your angry eyes, just in case.
Let's move! Geronimo!
To infinity
And beyond!
Don't talk to any toy you don't know!
This Thanksgiving, the toys are back in town.
Woody saves the day again!
And just trying to get home.
It isn't a real rescue without Buzz Lightyear.
In one piece. Tom Hanks, Tim Allen, Toy Story 2.
Ride like the wind, Bullseye!
I remember, I can't remember what film I was going to see at the time, but I remember seeing the trailer for Toy Story 2. It was the initial teaser where it was the aliens in the rocket and the crane brought down the two. And I remember that so distinctly, and then I think it goes into the boys are back in town and Woody and Buzz. I remember just freaking out as a kid because obviously I love Toy Story so much, and that was the first kind of moment where the concept of a sequel coming out, was new to me. So it was a big thing. Toy Story 2 is a weird one. It's probably my least favourite one out of the trilogy, but it's still a fantastic film, and there's a lot more underlying themes in this one than I think there is in the first one.
Yeah, I think with Toy Story 2, I've got very fond memories of this, especially with the classic PS1 game that everyone had.
Yeah.
I think with this, what I've always liked about it was not just Ours Toy Band, but they kind of took this small world of toys from the first one and they kind of blew it up on scale where you had like cameos of stuff like Barbie, but when they go to Ours Toy Band, like everyone's alive. You have like evil birds, and I love what they tried to do with it. But as I've grown older, when I've seen it again, you kind of acknowledge the sort of museum bit because you get a lot of people, like myself included, that they'll get models and stuff, collectors, and I don't necessarily like leave them unopened, but they're on display. And I think that's what Toy Story 2 explores in a really good way, because that's what you get with a lot of toy people, collectors. But also, aside from that, it's just a really fun film, and it's just great to see them all again.
And I would say out of all three of the Toy Story films, this is probably the one that's on the biggest scale, because I mean, you look at the ending with like the whole thing with the airplane. That's on a much bigger scale than I would say Toy Story 3 is. That's very much at the daycare centre, and true, it goes into that sort of inferno bit. But you're right about the whole collecting thing. It's a cool side to toys that I didn't think would ever be explored in a Toy Story movie. I thought they were going to keep it very much sort of around, kids playing with toys. That was the whole concept of it. But I guess it makes sense that when a toy gets broken, they're sort of, put to the side. And with Stinky Pete, who's the villain of this film, who's brilliant in this film, by the way, he talks about would you rather spend just a couple of years with your original owner and then be forgotten about, or would you rather be displayed forever for kids of all generations and just be there all the time? And I think that was a cool angle, and it really gets into Woody's head as he's thinking about this, and you can see sort of the seeds being planted for Toy Story 3, where the idea's in his head that one day Andy isn't gonna want to have anything to do with all the toys.
Yeah, and it early on in the film it explores it when Woody kind of rips his arm, he's put on the shelf, and this bit, is it Wheezy, the penguin? And I like the fact that where they're all kind of, he thinks he's gone and forgotten. You get the nightmare Kurt, and all the toys are in shock that he's on the shelf. So you're getting very early signs of it, and then Toy Story 3 fully goes into that. The other thing with Toy Story 2 is that I'm not particularly fond of Jessie the character, but the introduction of why she despises her owner, it was always pretty cool to watch that on film, because you don't really not appreciate it, but you don't really feel it till you're older, and a lot of people think that's better than the scene in Up. We'll talk about that later, but it's quite like, for a Pixar film, it's quite an emotional moment. But there's also the theory that that's the mother of Andy.
Yeah, I did see this theory, and obviously I don't think that's true because they haven't actually said that, and I think that would make the world quite a lot smaller if it was. But it's a neat theory, and there's loads of theories surrounding the Pixar films. You mentioned earlier about how they're all linked and stuff. I do think that's a nice theory though. But I would say, although Toy Story 1 had its emotional moments, like with the "I will go sailing no more" scene with Buzz. Um, I think this one was sort of the catalyst and the first moment where we would come to see these really, tug at your heartstrings emotional moments in all of Pixar films. Maybe not Cars, but that seemed to be a recurring theme between the films from this point on.
Yeah, and that's what Pixar do because it kind of aim not just aim at the adults, but they probably get invested in it a bit more. Known it's not just this pathetic childish film. Because obviously a lot of them just get drawn to the cinema for the kids and they have to see it.
Mm.
But another thing I'll say, what's your favourite scene from this one?
Um, it's gotta be the reference to Empire Strikes Back with Emperor Zurg and Buzz on the elevator, where they recreate the revelation from Empire Strikes Back.
Surrender, Buzz Lightyear. I have won.
I'll never give in. You killed my father.
No, Buzz. I am your father.
That I loved it at the time because obviously I grew up with Star Wars, so I immediately got the reference. But it's just that Emperor Zurg's such a cool character in that film, and then you get the payoff scene afterwards where Zurg's playing catch with the other Buzz Lightyear, and it's just hilarious. That's probably my favourite scene of Toy Story 2.
I know. I think we've got it spot on there. I was going to
Yeah.
say that because it's so funny as well, and I think obviously also timing that Lucas created Pixar before he sold on Steve Jobs,
Yeah.
so that's even more incredible, like miniature stuff wise, because he obviously had no input into it, but for them to like reference it so obviously, he probably loved it.
So that's our second Empire Strikes Back comparison in this review, which is pretty cool. But yeah, no, that scene's great. And then a couple of years after that, we get Monsters Inc.
Roz, you're looking fabulous today. Is that a new haircut? New makeup. You've had a lift. You've had a tuck. You've had something.
We've always been afraid monsters were there,
Scary feet, scary feet, scary feet. Oh, the kid's awake.
waiting to scare us.
Twins and a bunk bed.
But what we didn't know is that we scare them.
What happened?
The kid almost touched me.
You can't touch a child, they're toxic. If a kid ever got through one of our doors, the results would be catastrophic.
Monsters Incorporated.
It's a musical. Put that thing back where it came from, or so help me. So help me, so help me. And cut.
I love Monsters Inc. and the voice acting in this especially shines through because the how the characters John Goodman and Billy Crystal play off each other is just phenomenal in this film, I think.
Yeah, Monsters Inc.'s a weird one. I remember it when I was younger, but I never had it on video or DVD, and I didn't see it again till I think the 3D re-release.
Yeah.
So I'd completely forgotten about it. I hadn't seen it enough. So it's one of them where I saw it properly at a later age. I really enjoyed it because I didn't grow up with it. It's so much harder to compare with some of the classics, i.e. the Toy Story, Bugs Life. But it's great though because it's another one like what Pixar always get right is the concept where almost every film is its own thing. There's different worlds, buildings, stuff like that. And I just think the concept of Monster Inc. that the monsters in the closet, they're actually like getting energy. And this is just really cool thing, and they explore it well.
I'd say it's probably the cleverest concept to a Pixar film I've seen. I just love the idea that the whole city's powered on screams, and they've got this whole business, this warehouse where you've got all the workers trying to get screams. This is just their job. This is just what they do, and it's a nice, heartfelt story. Obviously, you've all probably seen the movie with Boo and all that stuff. It's just a great. It gets really inventive. Some of the monster designs are a lot of fun, and I think this appeals to kids as well as adults. Again, like with Toy Story 2, they really play up the emotional aspect to it. But and I would say that Mike Wazowski, played by Billy Crystal, is one of my favourite characters from Pixar. Probably right next to Woody because he's just hilarious.
Oh yeah, and I think what you need for him is to be cuddly. Like you've got Sully, who's the grizzly bear, but he's actually like a massive softie. Then you've got Mike, who they work so well together, and he's almost the comic relief. Because if you have these scary monsters, the kids are gonna like hate it. So they kind of had to get the comedy in there, and I think when it finishes with the fact that actually getting comedy out of kids rather than scares is this like passing to Mike where he can finally be, you know, not the scarer but the main guy, which he originally wanted to do, which we'll talk about in the prequel later. But the groundwork from Monsters Inc. onwards is so cool, and it's even the twist like Randall, you know, he's pretty intimidating when he camouflages and stuff, and then they explore like the Earth side. Is it the abominable snowman or the Yeti they use? So even these like myths and they name drop. I think the Loch Ness monster, all of it. It's just so cool that the little details that Pixar can go into their films.
And then to bring another Empire Strikes Back reference into it, Randall's sidekick in the film, Fungus, voiced by Frank Oz, who did the voice of Yoda. He's a lot of fun in the film as well. But the whole ending of the film, with the whole door chase and the whole warehouse full of the closet doors, that was really the big... We saw it at the end of Toy Story 2, but this for me was where you really saw how far the animation had come since the likes of Toy Story 1 or Bug's Life. Just the scale of it and the high intensity, and you watch it, and I don't know if I had a behind the scenes video on Monsters Inc. when it came out, like a little free video, but you see them programming every single individual strand of hair on Sully, and this was a big thing at the time, obviously, because we hadn't really seen animation like this. It was still very much in its infancy. But now you just look at that on anything, and I guess it's a lot easier to do now, and you just expect that. But at the time, there was these poor animators just like programming and moving little strands of hair individually. But the effort really shows in the finished product because the animation's fantastic.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the thing. It was such new technology at the time that Pixar were the face runners of it. And if you look at it, they hadn't purchased Pixar, or Disney hadn't purchased Pixar at this point. But at this stage, the Disney animated films, they'd kind of dropped off slightly, and I think even Disney preferred Pixar from the quality of films. And then you kind of had this big hype train come in, and then obviously Disney eventually bought them. But I think what Pixar do is, as a company, they try and do new things. I know they've turned sequel bound recently, but they hadn't done a sequel from Toy Story 2 until Toy Story 3, and that's like a good 11 years.
Yeah, and now we're starting to see the whole sequel thing be a much bigger thing with Pixar, which I don't think that's a good direction for Pixar. I much love their original content more in their first few years. But it's interesting with this film and our next film in the list, which is Finding Nemo. They brought out little teaser trailers from what I can remember of Monsters Inc. and Finding Nemo on the video of the previous film to show you what was coming up next. In both teaser trailers, I thought, well, that film looks crap. Monsters Inc. comes out, loves it. On the video for that, they show a teaser trailer for Finding Nemo. I think, oh, that looks crap as well. Finding Nemo, for the longest time, I believe, was the highest grossing animated film of all time, and I think rightfully deserved as well, because Finding Nemo, again, one of Pixar's best. Voice cast is phenomenal, and all the stuff they do, like with the Sea World, and the characters are just so much fun. The animation's beautiful, it still holds up as a film, and this is one, again, like what we got with Monsters University, this is one I'm really concerned with that they're doing a sequel to, because I don't think it needs one.
71% of the Earth's surface is covered by water.
How's it going, Bob?
That's a big place to find one fish.
Has anybody seen my son?
Your son Chico?
No, it's Nemo. We're looking for Nemo.
Finding Nemo.
Yeah, and this thing with Nemo, I'll briefly go into it first. I remember seeing the cinema a few times. It was so cool, and I love what they do. It's almost two films happening, but with the sequel stuff, the one thing I'm not keen on is Dory.
Yeah,
I was just never really into it. Like I can like the comedy relief stuff, but Dory was one of them where it's too much. I know a lot of people like it, but she's not big enough to warrant her own film. It's very much like the Minions. They're great side characters, but if you're going to give them their own film, people are going to get incredibly bored of them quickly.
Yeah, and to compare that to another Pixar film, that to me is a lot like Cars 2. You take the supporting character who... I don't like the supporting character of Mater in Cars, but I guess he works in Cars 1 because he's a supporting character to the main character. But you're right, when you take a sequel and you make it all about them, the charm of them wears off a lot quickly. But I do like Dory in the first Finding Nemo, and I think she has a place in the story, and she works, and she's good comic relief. It's difficult what else to say about Finding Nemo really, because it's such a good film. I'd recommend anyone watches it. If I'm gonna go with a favourite scene from it, it's probably with Bruce the Shark, because that whole scene's hilarious, and they do like a reference to The Shining in there as well. It's just brilliant.
That's the thing. Oh, there's so much. Because the shark stuff was when they were vegans. That was probably one of the funniest things I think I remember when I was younger. Because obviously, everyone sees a shark, they think they're going to die, but these ones are vegans and they can't sniff the blood. So that caused have gone. I think my favourite scene might be Nemo's induction. When they're in the fish tank, he's got to go.
Is it the Ring of Fire?
That's the one, and then they're kind of chanting, and then like one of them's like screaming. I think it might be the starfish. It's so funny, but also Willem Dafoe is quality in it.
Turn on the Ring of Fire. The Ring of Fire. You said you could do it. The Ring of Fire!
Isn't there another way? He's just a boy!
From this moment on, you will now be known as Sharkbait.
Sharkbait! Ooh-ha-ha!
Welcome, brother Sharkbait.
Sharkbait! Ooh-ha-ha!
Enough of the Sharkbait.
Sharkbait! Ooh,
I was just going to bring up Willem Dafoe. Yeah, he always has that underlying creepiness to every role he's in, and that's still present when he's in an animated film playing a fish. But he's just a brilliant character because he's all scarred up, and he's got history that he's tried to escape himself and all that. And he's sort of a mentor figure really to Nemo when he's in the tank, and he looks out for him, which I really like about his character.
Yeah, and I think the other bit is when they all get out, they kind of get into the river and they're like, now what?
That's like a mid-credit scene, isn't it? And it's brilliant.
Exactly. It's just so funny because it's true that like they've spent like so long trying to get out of there. Then again, with that you can say about the nutcase. Is it the niece of the dentist?
Darla, yeah.
And she's just like terrifying. She just kills them all, and it's similar to Sid that you just have this like psychopath from when they're younger. But then I think this is just like creeps up with the braces and all of it.
Yeah, and as funny as it is, we still see Pixar not pulling any punches. You expect like, oh, this is going to be like a fun father-son fish story, but man, that opening scene, I remember as a kid like watching that immediately just throws you into the tension and the heartstrings with it. And obviously we'll get to Up, they do something similar with that. But I remember like the title came up and I was already in tears. I was like, oh my god, Pixar, why you do this?
I know, it's very depressing. It's just when he's so happy and stuff, there's all of them, and then it's there's one and it's like got scar across it, and I think Pixar know how to pull the heartstrings, and the fact they can do it with a film about fish is even like more incredible as a feat.
Yeah, and I'll bring up, we haven't really brought up like the soundtracks and stuff to the other ones. They're mostly done by Randy Newman, but this was the one where the soundtrack was done by Thomas Newman. He's done the soundtracks to, I believe, films like The Green Mile and Shawshank Redemption, Lemony Snicket's series Unfortunate Events, stuff like that. And the soundtrack to this film's really nice as well, and it really kicks in when those emotional moments happen. So like the intro where all the eggs are eaten by the barracuda. But there's a neat little reference in this film which will link into the next film, which is The Incredibles. In the dentist chair, there's a kid reading a comic book of Mr. Incredible, which I think was a pretty neat nod to the next film, obviously directed by Brad Bird. I think we may have talked about this film briefly, possibly in our Iron Giant review. We kind of went back and talked about it, or maybe in our Tomorrowland review. This came out 2004. I remember seeing this in the cinema, and honestly, I really didn't like it at all. In fact, this was probably the first Pixar film up until this point where I was sort of, it's okay, it's not one of Pixar's best, but I think it's one, although it's not one of my favourites, and I'm not going to rank it up there in my top few, it's grown on me a lot more as an adult now, especially when I've got more into superheroes as a genre, and I think they do some neat stuff with the whole superhero retirement act and like the family dynamic. I think that's really strong in this film.
What's the toughest thing about being a superhero? trying to live a normal life. Whether it's pumping up,
I got it!
dinner with the family,
Stop running in the house! No! Hey, no force field! You sit down! You sit down! Let go of your brother!
or seeing old friends.
Hey, Lucius!
Hey, Speedo!
This is a weird one of The Incredibles, because I saw it when I was younger, and I half liked it, but again, it's a bit like one thing, didn't have it video or DVD. And then I remember going into year 10 at school, we're doing a massive thing on superhero films as literature, and, well, sorry, not lit, whatever the GCSE was, I think it's like basically English media.
Yeah.
And we had two films, we had Spider-Man and The Incredibles, and I remember writing I refused to do any of the coursework, because I says you should be doing Dark Knight, and I remember writing my teacher an essay explaining why I'd be doing the Dark Knight, and she loved it, so she framed it. And then I've got very bad memories of The Incredibles. Then again, I've got great memories, because then I ended up doing the Dark Knight and got like an A star on it. So it's one of them where I'm not too keen on it. Like I understand the fan base where, you know, these superhero films are breaking through, and Disney did this. It had some cool things to it, but it's just one where it's like, I've seen this all before. Now there's dozens of superhero films. They're just taking bits and bobs from the other superhero films. But one thing I will say, although I'm not too keen on it, I love the character of Frozone.
Oh yeah, Samuel Jackson's brilliant in this film, and it's that one scene everyone remembers where he's like, "Honey, where's my super suit?" I love that scene.
Honey!
What?
Where's my super suit?
What?
Where is my super suit?
Put it away!
Where?
Why do you need to know?
I need it!
Don't you think about running off to doing no daring do? We've been planning this dinner for 2 months.
The public is in danger!
My evening's in danger.
You tell me what my suit is, woman! We are talking about the greater good!
Greater good? I am your wife. I'm the greatest good you are ever gonna get.
I guess like one of my problems with this movie is that I just don't find the villain syndrome a compelling enough villain for the film. With any superhero thing, the heroes are only as good as their villain, and I think I like his motivation and why he became a villain. That's fine, but I just think like the design of him, and he doesn't really do all that much. Really, it's kind of the henchmen of robots. The main bad guys kind of in this film. That's who the villains fight with.
Yeah, he's just this rich guy that's started building stuff. He's just got. I always see it. Obviously, I've seen it in the past year, is it? But the Jamie Foxx Electro, where it's basically you don't remember me. It's just. I think it's just like a petty feud that kicks off, and it's got some cool things. I like a lot of it, but you're right. I prefer the family stuff rather than the actual superhero stuff.
Yeah, and I know we're getting a sequel now. I can't remember the release date on it, but out of all the Pixar films, I was really surprised that this didn't almost get an immediate sequel. It ends on a massive cliffhanger ending, and I think this is justified to have a sequel because there's a lot of areas you can go into it. But I don't know if it's almost too late for a sequel now. I know the audience is still there, and you know, fans have been very vocal that they've wanted a sequel for many years, but I'll definitely go and see the sequel. I think it could go into a lot of interesting areas, and it will be nice to see sort of where the family is now, whether Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl have sort of retired now because they're older. Another thing I want to bring up about this film is the music by Michael Giacchino. I think the soundtrack's probably the strongest part of this film, really. It's very sort of spy movie with a lot of brass focused, and it really works for the film.
Yeah, and I can't remember the soundtrack as much, but with Giacchino, I've said many times how much I like him as a composer. I believe he's also worked in a few of the other Pixar films. I definitely know he's done Inside Out.
Yeah.
And I think he did Up and
He did
Ratatouille.
Up, yeah. Mhm.
So he's kind of built up from Pixar, and now he's working his way up. It's quite nice to him go back to it, because although he's going to have a massive career, he's still going back to the Pixar stuff, which is pretty cool, because these films need their soundtracks to help sell them.
Yeah, and you talked about Disney earlier, when that moved away from 2D into 3D animation. It was sort of in between The Incredibles and the next film, Cars. Chicken Little came out 2005, and that to me was the death of Disney. It's had a sort of resurgence in recent years, but this was where they basically walked in one day to their 2D artist and says, right, everyone listen up, 2D artists, right, you're all fired because we're going to start doing 3D animation. And I think that was the beginning of the end for a long time for Disney. It was a very dark patch, and I would also say it's somewhat of a dark patch for the next Pixar film. 2006, we get Cars, which to me, although my thoughts on Incredibles weren't great, Cars was the one I walked out of and said I didn't like that film.
Okay, here we go. Focus. Speed.
Hey, Lightning, you ready?
Oh, yeah.
The rookie sensation came into the season unknown, but everyone knows him now.
You're my hero, Mr. McQueen.
Fred, thank you.
He knows my name. He knows my name.
What's so important about this race of yours?
I've been dreaming about it my whole life.
A guy who thought he had it all is about to discover everything he's been missing.
I knowed I made a good choice.
In what?
My best friend.
Yeah, I think with Cars, it's a tough one because I quite like the concept of this Cars world, but the fact that they're basically just human is, you know, your racing car driver is actually a car.
Yeah.
And I don't really. I thought they could have done. There's one or two little things that work, and I like the sort of racing stuff at the start, but I just remember seeing this, and I think I must have been 10 at the time when it came out, and it was one of the first ones where I was just quite bored, and I wanted to go back to one of the old ones. It just didn't do anything for me.
And to me, I know I'm massively overthinking this, but I just don't get the concept. Like, this came into it more with Cars 2, but I was like, okay, so humans don't exist in this world. Fair enough, everything's a car. Who builds the cars? Do the cars build the cars? Who builds the petrol stations and the landmarks, especially the landmarks in Cars, in Cars 2? Who builds those? Do people build those, but the cars populate the world? It's just, I can't get my head around the concept, and I think with this one and Cars 2, these were the Pixar films that really only appealed to young kids. There's none of that emotional quality to it like all the other Pixar films, and there's none of those moments where an adult can watch it and still like it. It seems like a film that you just sort of throw on in the background and let the kids watch it and just let them be caught up for it for like an hour and a half to 2 hours while the parents do something else.
Yeah, because it's weird. I mean, Disney bought them in January '06, and I think this came out in like summer '06, so this was still very much Pixar. But I'm sure at the time of making it, I reckon they probably knew that Disney were going to buy them, and it felt like the very first Disney Pixar film rather than just a Pixar film itself.
Yeah.
And it kind of summed up all the fears when this got its sequel, which I didn't think it, and then it even got its spin-offs. I mean, I was looking earlier, and to be fair to the spin-offs, there's an audience there, because I think the two films made about 150 mil and 200 mil off like 50 mil budgets. So clearly, I think the kids do like it, but it's just, I just don't think they're very good.
Yeah, and it's a big merchandising powerhouse as well. And you talked about the spin-offs. We're also getting a Cars 3, I think, in the future, because I think they announced that with Incredibles 2. So it looks like Cars is going to be around for a while.
Yeah, it's a shame, because there's always one or two good bits, like the Italian ones that are obsessed with Ferraris. They kind of worked in the first one, the little Schumacher cameo, and then, but when they got to the second one, it was pretty. Well, actually, I'm going to go into that a lot more. Actually, forget that. I'll do that later on.
All right, and I do think, yeah, you're right about the Italian cars. Obsessed with it's wheels, isn't it? And Ferraris he's obsessed with.
Yeah.
There's some characters like that are fun, but like I've talked about the other times where the voice cast really shines through in the characters. Even if the film's not great, you can go, oh, but those characters are great. They're the only ones I can really think of. I think I've only seen the first Cars film about twice, in passing. I think I remember liking the end race. I thought that was pretty good, and visually, the angles they use and stuff like that was really good. And I like the whole thing where that car crashes towards the end, and Lightning McQueen has that character arc where he puts aside the ego and he kind of helps the broken car over the finish line. I liked that part of the film. But it's just one that I find incredibly forgettable, especially the sequel, but that comes a lot later. But I think I've said everything on the first Cars film, so we move to our next film, which came out the following year, 2007, Ratatouille.
Ah, Paris, France. Home of the finest restaurants and the greatest chefs in the world. All my life, I've wanted to be one of them. You may think that's a strange dream for a rat, but I've always believed that with hard work and a little luck, it's only a matter of time before I'm discovered.
Run! Yes, I'm happy. Do you know what would happen if anyone knew we had a rat in our kitchen? Go! Take it away from here, garbage boy!
Now, I've only seen this film the once, and that was quite a while ago. I didn't get chance to go back and refresh myself on this. I remember not caring for it all. It's sort of forgettable. From what I can remember is there's that sort of down on his luck chef who's trying to make it big in Paris. He befriends this rat called Remy, I think, and then the rat sort of helps him discover his skills and his talents.
Yeah, I think I've got no idea how I did it, but I remember seeing this at the cinema.
See, I didn't see this one at the cinema. I caught this on home video later.
It was bizarre how I saw it. I think the story was I was out with one of my friends, and then this is like starting year 7, so you know that mentality, and then we saw a group of them going to the cinema, so we all went in and met up. It was one of them bizarre ones, and I think I remember seeing this, and there was one or two cool little bits about it, but I just thought it was very forgettable. Whereas it's weird because there was this kind of cool open scene where all the rats were escaping. He's like, "Oh, this is me," and that kind of stuff. But I just remember when it was happening, I was just a bit bored, and I liked the fact it was kind of cool that it was a rat doing it, but that could have easily been a human. Whereas you look at, obviously they're going with cars, the same with this. But as you look at the ones like Nemo and Monsters Inc. and Toy Story, they wouldn't ever work as humans, these characters. Whereas it felt like with this that they just wanted to put a rat there for the sake of it because it was different, very much like Cars. So it didn't have any like ingenious things to the rats. It's kind of just the general opinion is, there's a rat cooking. That's what I felt like watching it. There's just nothing special about it.
Yeah, it seems like a film where they came up with a title. Obviously, Ratatouille is a name of an actual French dish, and they just thought, "Oh, hang on, that's got rat in it. Let's do a Pixar film about this," you know. And I've only just found out now that it's directed by Brad Bird. I didn't realise that.
Oh yeah, it's
But
sorry, you carry on.
no, I was just gonna say, I like the environment it's set in. I think they recreate Paris very well, and the music's I can remember the music to it, the main theme. But it's just forgettable. I know there's that whole speech at the end with the critic, and that's usually held up as one of the best scenes from the film. And I'm looking on here, it got critical acclaim. It made quite a lot at the box office, quite impressive. I need to go back and rewatch this one, but I didn't get a chance before we're doing this review. This is the one that I can't remember all too well, but again, I just kind of found it and it wasn't a return to form for Pixar I wanted after Cars.
Yeah, I think with this one, it felt like Disney's full action plan, where this is aimed towards the kids. We'll get our money through it, whereas a lot of the old ones, although they're very much kid orientated, they're very accessible for adults, and they kind of go back to that in the next few films, but then they take a bad turn again.
Yeah, I think that's just the course of Pixar now. They go through peaks and wanes. We thought they were untouchable for a while, but we've seen that they can make less than average films. But our next film, 2008, the following year, was WALL-E, which was just a massive success for Pixar. But again, this was another one I didn't catch in the cinema. I caught this much, much later, actually, loads of years after it came out.
700 years into the future, mankind will leave our planet, leaving Earth's cleanup in the hands of one incredible machine. His name is Wall-E. After all these years, he's developed one little glitch. A personality. He's extremely curious. And just a little bit lonely. But all that is about to change.
My thoughts on WALL-E are a bit weird. I don't like it as much as everyone else seems to, but for me the strongest bit of the film is the first 20 minutes to half hour or so, where there's no dialogue. It's all visual. It's just the little Wall-E robot doing his job. He's sort of stacking all the trash on Earth. Humans have left Earth and made a colony in space, and these little robots sort of populating the globe to try and clear it up. And there's lots of funny things where he's watching that musical on the TV. He's finding weird little objects and knickknacks that he doesn't know what they are, and that stuff was great. And the whole stuff with Eva, where she shows up, and they have that chemistry. And then I think the second part of this film, where Wall-E gets aboard the spaceship, is where the film really goes downhill, and it's not as smart as the first part of the film was for me.
Yeah, I think with Wall-E, there's a lot of history to it. I didn't see this till about a year ago, but when it came out as a massive deal, and there was that. Do you remember when everyone says, "Oh my God, why isn't The Dark Knight been up for an Oscar for Best Film?"
Yeah,
I believe they also said this about Wall-E as well, because a lot of people thought it was strong enough, which I can understand, because that first half hour was untouchable. I'm not as much a fan as the others. This and Dark Knight were the two that brought in the rule of the Oscars changed the following year, and you can have 5 to 10 films. So I think it's big in that sense. But when I saw it, I had a lot of people hyping it up, friends from college, teachers.
Same.
I remember seeing it, and you're right, the opening third was perfect, and when they get to the space station, it's kind of cool concept that they were left and got fat. It's very predictable. Obviously, they do a lot of that eco stuff. But then it kind of just turns when it becomes incredibly obvious that the villain is the wheel. Then it's got his 2001 Space Odyssey references. So it became quite hard to follow, and some of the comedy stuff where they just had the fat people like sliding around, I don't really think it worked. But I think that the first half was so well done that it's very easy to forget the not so great parts of it. Like I think it's a return to form for Pixar.
Yeah.
Compared to the previous few, and they just weren't quite hitting it. But what they tried to do, because I think if they did a whole film with him on his own, it would work for us, but not for the prime audience, which are the younger people. So it's one of them where I think the older you get, the more you see it, it probably gets better.
Yeah, I can see that. I would have liked Pixar to be a little bolder and maybe make this the first Pixar film without dialogue, like without direct dialogue. I think if they did a whole film where it was like the first third, then I think audiences would have still been completely on board with it. But they probably thought, no, we best get some dialogue in there. We best get some kind of story in there But I think audiences love the character of Wall-E, and I think even audiences that usually like dialogue would admit that the first bit of the film's the best bit. But it's what we got. I think this would have benefited maybe as a Pixar short, because it strikes me as that kind of sense at the start, like this could have been a nice 10 to 15 minute short before a Pixar film. But I still think it's a good film. I still like the bit that comes to mind is where he's floating in space in the stars. That bit's beautiful to watch. The animation's fantastic in the film. But for me, the plot does kind of get derailed after the first third of the film. And then we go... This is sort of a similar criticism I have with our next film, which came out a year after, which was Up. Again, massive acclaim. And I did see this one in the cinema. For me, the entire film goes downhill after the first 10 minutes.
All his life, Carl Fredricksen dreamed of adventure. Today, his adventure is finally taking off.
Up's a very tough one, because that opening scene is probably one of the strongest opening scenes done in cinema.
Yeah.
And then when you look at it, it was very much, a lot of my friends had hyped it up. I think about a year or two ago I went for a massive Pixar spell when I was re-seeing them all, so this is how I saw this. I liked it. I liked some of the concepts, but as the film went on, I was getting less and less intrigued by it. So I like what they do where he's trying to explore and he's like a kid again, he meets his idol that's actually evil. I like some of that stuff, but I just don't think it's as good as it starts. But I think again it's with the supporting character, the little kid, like you know, to the kids he's all cute, he's funny, and then it was just a bit annoying with me. But I like a lot of it. Like the dog was great in it.
Yeah.
The old guy was great, but it's just it's a really hard one to explain because I think I can see why they liked it, but it just naturally didn't work for me. And I think it's just one of them where it's just okay, it's just not for me. Like I can understand everyone's approval of it.
Yeah, I think I'm sort of the same on that. I've only seen this film the once, which was at the cinema. The feels train in the first 10 minutes, can't fault that. In fact, I think Pixar's probably at its strongest when it doesn't need to rely on dialogue. Like, obviously, the bit at the start of Finding Nemo does have dialogue at the start, doesn't it? But, like, the bit of the ending of Toy Story 3 in the Inferno, that's done with no dialogue. The bit we talked about earlier with Wall-E with no dialogue. I think it works well when they do that and they just let the music do and the visuals do the talking. Again, I think it's just forgettable. I remember the dogs. I remember the legion of evil chipmunk voiced dogs. And then there's some kind of plain dog fight at the end, I think. Like, I can't remember it all that well, but it just didn't grab my attention. I've been very bored. I wasn't particularly wowed by the visuals all that much. And the only thing I do remember from it is what I said, the first 10 minutes. And I don't see what everyone else sees in this film, because people always say that this is one of Pixar's best, but it just does absolutely nothing for me. And I think it's sort of the same as you, that this just isn't a film for me, personally.
Yeah, and I think that's just spot on, because there's a lot of stuff that works, but it just comes down to your natural thoughts of it. And for one, it didn't like. I can appreciate it gone in, and I say again that opening scene's one of the best I've ever seen for that.
Yeah.
But it's just naturally didn't do it. It's tough because normally with Pixar, you know, they're very nails on with it, but they kind of slip back in a few films' time. It kind of slowly dips again, and I think now with The Good Dinosaur and Inside Out, we might be getting a resurgence.
Yeah, but June 18th, 2010, we get probably one of the best, and for me, the most emotional cinema-going moment of my entire life, which was Toy Story 3.
Watch out! No, just keep playing. Just pretend I'm not here. Does the red light mean it's going?
I've been cold, I've been hungry, now for a while. I guess most of my dreams have come true. With it all,
Andy's going to college. Can you believe it?
Mom, I'm not leaving till Friday.
What are you going to do with these old toys?
'Cause I never get over losing you. No, I'll never get over losing you.
Again, we've talked about this loads in our top 10 lists before. This was everything I wanted from this film and more. It was the most fitting conclusion, one of the most fitting conclusions to a trilogy I've ever seen. I know, obviously, Toy Story 4 is coming out, unfortunately, but this was everything I wanted from it. It starts off, you've got the references to the first one, and right there it plays You've Got a Friend in Me, and it eases you straight back into this film, because I think this film was made for us, like our age group that grew up with it, that stayed with it, and we were the similar age to what Andy is in Toy Story 3, and that plays a big part in it because you have that immediate connection to it straight away. The story's great as well, and it's the whole film is this theme of a send-off and moving on, which is what I really love. The action at the end gets really intense, and I was an emotional wreck at this film. Like, I went to see this with a group of friends. I think I had a double cinema day of this and Inception, so that was a great day to be a film fan. But I came out and everyone was on a high and was like, "Oh, that was fantastic. What did you think of it, Chris?" And I couldn't talk. If I talked, I would have just broken, because this was everything that I wished it had have been and more.
I remember it clearly because the Americans, as usual, got it this time not a few months, so they got it a few weeks. Yeah. And it was bizarre. I remember this came out on a Monday because it was just after one of my birthdays. And I remember going with my sister towards it, and obviously it was full. A Monday cinema, very rarely full, but it's just a weird day to release a film. And I just remember sitting down and I was having so much fun, and it was all working. It was great seeing them back. It was on top form. They were all great. You were seeing these new characters that were cool, and it was going so well until they got to the Inferno scene, and that is without a doubt in the cinema. That was literally killing me when it was happening. I didn't really understand what was going on. I was getting really angry and upset at the same time. And then it's when they all hold hands together and they're just going in, and I was literally there like, what are they doing? But then unfortunately I've seen too many films, and at this stage I kind of thought, where have the aliens gone? And that completely killed it, because if I'd have thought they were going to die, I might have got worse. But then the claw came in and saved them. But again, that was tougher to see than the opening scene, I think, and a lot of the other scenes they've done. And that's purely because they're kind of killing your childhood.
Yeah, literally. But I remember that scene in particular. The entire audience was into it, and like me and my friends and loads of other people in cinema, they were like climbing up onto their chairs, and like the hands were going up to their mouth, like, they can't end. Is this how it's going to end? Are they going to end it where they just kill everyone? Because I think that plays into the strength of the film, when you can put characters in peril at any moment in the film, and you think that that's going to be their end. I think that plays well into the storytelling and the script of it and the pacing of it, because we didn't know at the time that they were going to make a Toy Story 4, so we thought this was going to be the ending, and I still think it should be, by the way. So we didn't know what could happen. We knew it was sort of wrapping up towards the end of the film, and we probably, on reflection, would thought, well, they'd never end it there. They wouldn't leave you with that final image of your favourite characters melted into a fiery inferno. But, like you said, you remembered the aliens. I remembered that they ran off, but I was just so in the moment that I completely forgot about them. So when that spotlight comes on and the claw comes down, like, everyone in the theatre cheered, and it was an amazing moment. And it still is probably, thinking about it, it probably is the best cinematic experience I've ever had for a film.
It's a weird one, because I remember, speaking for cinematic experiences, it's very much going to be like Force Awakens to me, where I was hyping up this so much, but then what I remember saying was, when I booked the tickets, we had good seats, and I was there to my sister, I was like, we bought it early, I was like, because if I were to see like 3-4-year-olds in front of me in the queue, and I couldn't see it, I said I'd be fuming, because these are my films.
I was exactly the same.
I very much like Star Wars, but obviously the more you look into it, I'm assuming that when I was 3 years old and watching, or 2 or 3, watching Phantom Menace, there was obviously the hardcore ultras were like, what the hell are these kids doing here? But then again, they all hated it, so they probably didn't come back and watch it.
Yeah, no, I was exactly the same. I was like, old man syndrome, even back then, just like folding my arms, see these little kids in the ones. I was like, they don't know. They don't appreciate this as much as I am. They're just in there for the colourful toys and funny voices. I'm here for the emotion, damn it. But after this, just when you thought, like, Pixar had clawed their way back, they were at the pinnacle, they were untouchable. And then a year after, we get another sequel to one of their previous films. We get Cars 2, which I only watched for the first time like a couple of days ago, and this was just as bad as I thought it was going to be.
In 2006, two unlikely friends became the heroes of Radiator Springs. But on their next big road trip, they're not only racing across the world.
Wish me luck.
You go get him, buddy.
Welcome to the inaugural running of the World Grand Prix.
They're racing to save the world.
No one can stop us.
Finn McMissile, British intelligence.
So, matey, average intelligence.
Yeah, you're right, exactly. When we said we'd do a Pixar thing, that would go for every film, I was like, okay, we'll list. I was like, alright, I've seen all of them except Cars 2.
Yeah, this was the one I was dreading.
I was like, the day has finally come to see it. I've seen reviews hating it, fans hating it. So I tried to, when I clicked play, I tried to think of some of the good stuff. I knew there was going to be cameos of racing drivers. I'm a massive F1 fan. Lewis Hamilton he wasn't boring in it. He just didn't really need to be there in it. Just the celebrity thing.
Yeah.
And it kind of started off pretty cool with the spy stuff. I won't lie, that Michael Caine's great in it, but it's when I come to the acknowledgement that the main character has gone from Lightning McQueen to Mater, it was just a horrible experience to have, because he's such an annoying character. I just really was getting pissed off by it. It was just too. It was too much. He's a horrible character to have. And they had some really cool racing stuff going on where all the kind of racing cars in the world are uniting for this massive series. With the spy stuff in the background, they could have done something cooler with the other drivers, but no. It had to be Mater to be the spy, and that just completely kills it for me. Because if you take that away, it's not a great thing, but it's a lot better than Cars 1, I think, with the prospect they're trying to do of having every type of race driver across it all. Some of it was working, the spy stuff, but then just Mater completely kills anything this film's going to have.
Yeah, and as you said, like, you're a big F1 fan. I don't follow that, so I knew that you'd have like a little bit of a connection to it, and you'd be able to pick up on all the voices because I didn't pick up on that, you see. But if I was going to say one positive thing about the first Cars film is that I liked the environment of Radiator Springs and a few of the supporting characters, and I would have liked to have seen them be developed more and more of their relationship and see them interact more. But you're right, it's really not. Again, they take the supporting character with Mater, played by Larry the Cable Guy, who is intolerable in this film. I just hate him. And the big thing I hate about his character is that it's courage. It's accidental courage. There's never a moment in this film where he's properly being a hero or he advances. He's always getting himself into these situations on accident, and it just all works out fine. To me, it reminds me a lot of Jar Jar Binks in the droid battle at the end of Phantom Menace.
Yep.
He's killing all these droids and stuff accidentally, and he's not intending to do it. So to me, that's not a hero or a compelling character, because they're just basically being a fucking idiot the whole movie, but it's just all working out for comedy.
Exactly, and it was so frustrating because Owen Wilson's like Mr. Monotone. He was as you'd expect to be in it. I can deal with that. Michael Caine's been Michael Caine. I was liking that. I was liking his spy stuff. It's kind of, he wasn't James Bond, but finally we'll give him his shot. And then you had one of my ultimate heroes who everyone hates, John Turturro, who voiced the Italian car, which was really cool because I know he was a villain, not a major one, but when the camera was on him, you could kind of feel that people aren't going to like him, and it was great listening to him because although he's a bit childish, some of what he was saying was true, and he was acting very Italian in a non-racist way, and you kind of had the scenes with his mum where he's like, "Mama."
That was funny.
Exactly, and he's got these great moments. You see in bits and bobs of the good stuff from Pixar, but Mater just completely ruins the film, and Eddie Izzard as well. Is it Eddie Izzard?
Who did he play in it?
That Colonel car with the fuel, the one that's set to pull the races. I think.
Oh, right, yeah.
Because I didn't know it was him. Well, I wouldn't have known it was him until. Have you ever seen the famous Star Wars sketch with the Lego Cantina?
Yeah, I'll kill you with a tray.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When he first spoke, because I'm used to him from a voice rather than stand up, I was like, "Oh shit, it's him," and it was really weird because he's just got this like unique accent. But I just sat there thinking of that Star Wars thing loads.
Yeah, and if I was going to say a positive about the film, I didn't know that was John Turturro, but now you tell me that makes a lot more sense now when I'm hearing his voice back in my head and I can see him playing him. Michael Caine is great because he's Michael Caine. Like, he can do no wrong. Even when he's in Jaws 4, he can do no wrong. It was a really weird angle for the film to go. It like goes into this whole British secret agent spy thing, and it's a really random continuation of what Cars started out as. And I have no idea now where the third one's going to go from here.
No, and hopefully they do a bit of racing because
I missed that from the first one in this one.
I don't think, as a plot and stuff, I don't think it has horrible potential. But to make Mater the main guy, it just kills it.
That was a mistake. Yeah.
And I think if you'd have introduced a new car, racing or anything, I don't think it'd be good, but I think it could have been tolerable, and I think I would have liked it. But with Mater, I just wanted his scenes to finish. I wanted it to cut to someone else, because it has these one or two moments, but then it's just completely ruined by Mater, and it's such a shame because I'd like to see a good Cars film without sounding weird. I'd rather they just made a new original film, which they're doing, but it's not as bad as I thought it would be, but I can understand their hate, and I hate a lot of it.
Yeah, same here. And then 2012, we get the 13th Pixar film in the series, Brave.
In accordance with our laws, the firstborn of each of the great leaders must prove their worth. Merida, stop! A lady enjoys elegant pursuits.
I present my only son. He took out a whole armada single-handedly. He was... With one arm, he was steering the ship.
I want my freedom. But are you willing to pay the price your freedom will cost?
Careful what you wish for, my mother would say.
What's the worst that could happen?
If you had the chance to change your fate, would you?
Again, this was one I'd put off watching for a long time. I only watched it for the first time a few days ago, preparing for this. I didn't really know what to make of it because it was very awkward. Like, it's Princess Merida, I think her name is in the film. She's now on the list of official Disney princesses, and here was me, the hardcore old school Disney enthusiast that was like, no, this is Pixar. Pixar princesses have no business in original Disney princesses. But I'm going to be honest, I actually really enjoyed this film, and it was a lot better than I expected it would. But saying that, I do have a lot of problems with it, because I know that this had quite a problematic production. They had the original director on there, writer and director, I think, Brenda Chapman, who she was really passionate about this story. She wanted to tell and make it sort of like an old school Hans Christian Andersen fable story. And then halfway through production, I think, she was kicked off the project, and then we got the new director, which was Mark Andrews. And I don't know if it was a clash of ideas of where they wanted the story to go, but you can really see that there's sort of a combination of two storylines thrown in here, which I think derails the film a little bit halfway through, because it starts out fantastic, but when they bring in the whole thing with the bear into it, it seems like it becomes a very different film. And the original title for this film was going to be The Bear and the Bow, or The Bow and the Bear, either one of those. And I don't know, it feels... The story's not a mess, because the theme and the moral of the story is still there, but it starts off a very different film with, like, the whole princess, she wants to be independent, she wants to find her own identity and break away from the parents, and then all of a sudden you get this sort of buddy road movie with the daughter and the mum who's been transformed into a bear.
Yeah, I think I was put off seeing this. I think I saw it a year or two ago, and I tried to go in nice. This is Pixar. I like a lot. I like. Well, not. So I won't say I like a lot of it. I like the beginning where it's different. They're trying to find a husband, and she does the sort of arrow stuff herself.
Yeah.
I was liking some of that. I think Billy Connolly's great in it.
He's fantastic in this film, yeah.
And then it kind of gets to the bear and the witch stuff, and I think naturally I'm not massive on fantasy stuff, but it didn't really feel like a Pixar film.
No, and that was going to be another one of my big points. This, to me, you can see Disney's fingerprints all over this movie, to the point in which this could have very easily have sort of nestled in between Tangled and Wreck-It Ralph and Frozen as just being part of the initial Disney animated classic series. We get like the song in it when she's having... It's not a training montage, but she's like scaling a mountain in the Highlands, and it plays this song, and it does feel very Disney-esque. It doesn't have that sort of wit or charm, or not adult, but again, this is very much for kids, I would say, or like teenagers. It doesn't have that sharp pace or wit to it like most of the original Pixar films did, and you're right, it does feel very, very Disney.
Yeah, and I think that's why I'm puffed, 'cause it would have worked. Like, I mean, you mentioned it, if put in the Wreck-It Ralph. If you take any of them Disney animated classic series, you put them in Pixar, they're not going to work. And maybe one or two might, but it's naturally they're two very different companies. I just kind of think that Disney thought they had something great, so they gave it to Pixar to do, whereas it would have worked in their other division, because you wouldn't have had that expectation as a Pixar film to be something special. And about the change in direction thing, I didn't actually know that, and it's incredibly obvious now I think about it, because they just two different films inside of it, and I don't think it works to its fullest potential. They should have focused on one aspect, whether it was the bear stuff or not be wanting to be a princess. They kind of just have this easy little merge.
Yeah, and because they have that merge, as I say, like after the first bit, I was completely on board for it. I was loving the characters. Billy Connolly was hilarious. I really liked. I'm gonna cut this out. Emma Thompson, is it? Yeah, Emma Thompson as the mother, because she's a fantastic actress. And I was loving all the characters and the supporting characters, stuff like that. And I loved being in this world. And then, although it didn't completely derail the plot for me, it felt a lot like Brother Bear almost. You know, with the person getting turned into the bear and discovering their identity and all stuff like that. It was kind of a mess of a story, but I still enjoyed it. Maybe it's because my hopes for it were so low and I didn't really know what I was going in expecting, that I came out of it and thought, yeah, that was a nice little film. I personally class it as a Disney film. It's not one to me that strikes me as a Pixar film. But then the year after that, Pixar retread another one of their films, this time with a prequel, not a sequel, with Monsters University.
Monsters University! Anybody getting off? I'm officially a college student!
I've been waiting for this my whole life.
I'm gonna be a scarer!
Okay, everyone, I'll be giving you your orientation on this perfect day.
Wazowski, room 319. You know, your roommate is a scaring major, too.
RJ, come here, boy.
Uh-oh.
Whoa! That was awesome. James P. Sullivan.
Mike Wazowski.
And to be honest, this is probably right next to Cars 2 with my least favourite Pixar film.
Yeah, I think Monster Junior is a weird one, because I know you've got a far bigger attachment to Monster Inc. than me.
Yeah.
So I remember seeing this, I think when it came out on Blu-ray, and I was like, oh, you know, it's okay. It's nothing special, nothing great. But I know a lot of massive Monsters Inc. fans that were like, this is shit. And
yeah,
I completely like see it though. Sorry, I just see that when I'm watching. It goes, if I was so big on the first one, I would really not like this.
Yeah, and this is like Cars 2 in that there's just nothing there. There's like the first one had so much emotion to it, and it really tugged at your heartstrings at the end. This is just trash. There's just nothing there. True, you've got the characters of Sully and Mike back, but they don't feel like the same characters. I know this being the fact that it's a prequel and they haven't become the characters we know. But the story's just nothing. It's really difficult for me to remember it. I only saw it. I think I saw it earlier in the year. Really, I was just curious to see it. But it just did nothing for me. It didn't have the charm, it didn't have the wit, it didn't have the sharp writing like the other one did. And I remember when it was originally announced as Monsters Inc. 2. And I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense, we're going to get a sequel. And then sort of that evolved and it was Monsters University, it's going to be a prequel. I was like, oh, do we need one? Like, Monsters Inc. did such a good job of building the world at the start and throwing you into this world with the characters that we just accepted it from the off. I don't think we needed a prequel to establish the characters. In fact, I think Sully and Mike have a line in the first Monsters Inc. that say they met at school or something. They don't say that they were at uni together. I think they say they met after that or like some other kind of school. I think that if they were going to do another Monsters Inc., it would have definitely have benefited from a sequel, especially from the ending shot of Monsters Inc. I think, although I wouldn't have wanted one, there's avenues that you could have gone with that. But I think going back and doing a prequel was kind of a mistake on Pixar's part.
Yeah, I think the way I see it, Toy Story 3 works so well with Andy leaving home. You had all this stuff. It was our age group. Our age group's at university when Monsters University comes out, so I think they thought they could recreate that bit where it just doesn't work, and I think they could have done a lot more. If they went to a prequel, they could have done better anyway. They could have naturally started off with them as scarers rather than them doing uni courses. I also think there's a better potential for a sequel with the Boo stuff. Maybe,
exactly, yeah.
Maybe if Sully met her and she was like 18, 19 rather than the cute 3-4-year-old we see when we're younger. So I think there was so much potential for this Monsters universe they could have done, and I don't think they just kind of jump on the bandwagon and go, right, let's just have them at uni because it will be a good crack. I just don't think they thought it through well enough.
Yeah, it was a lot of wasted potential. I mean, if they do go back to Monsters Inc. universe, I would like to see a sequel, I guess. But I just think this was kind of a wasted movie when they could have done a true continuation of it and try and get back to the emotion of the story more. And that's it. That's where we're up to now with Pixar before Inside Out comes out later this month. I guess now we'll just sort of, before we go into film fights, we'll round off with what we hope from Inside Out. Obviously, it's been out in the US for quite a few weeks now. We don't get it until, I think it's around the 24th of July, so towards the end of the month. I rewatched the trailer again the other day. I'm really looking forward to this film. It looks like a really fun concept, but again, it's a concept I'm interested to see how it plays out in a full film. It feels a lot like a Pixar short idea, and the trailer itself is sort of a short, really. But I've heard good things from it. I've heard that there's a lot of emotion to it. So I'm hoping this sort of like Toy Story 3 was. I'm hoping this is the next big thing for Pixar, and they're able to maintain their level of quality that they started out when they, just started out as a company.
Yeah, this is what I'm hoping for. I mean, one of my friends was at Cannes. He saw it. He says, yes, it's incredible. And I think, because off the trailer, you're right, it could have been a short, because that trailer is almost its own thing. And it's really cool seeing that. Whether or not that's a scene from the film or that was just a specific trailer moment, we don't know.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering as well.
But there's so much good stuff going around it where I think we are going to get a great Pixar film. And there's never ever been anything done like this before. I just can't ever think of a film about like the emotion to the brains and the different character things. So it's going to be one of them where I think it will be a hit. But I'm not trying to get too excited just in case it's not as good as I want it to be. But I really think this is them getting something great, and it wasn't delayed, because I think The Good Dinosaur's got a lot of potential. It's got great concept and stuff. That's been delayed a few times, so whether or not they're fixing things, but Inside Out, they just seem to have gone off and done it straight away.
Yeah, I'll agree with that, and I look forward to seeing that at the end of the month. So that was our big review / discussion of all the Pixar films. Now we're going to move into our usual segment of film fights. How this works is, usually we take a character or characters or event or anything from the news section and pit it against something with our review section. Today, obviously, we didn't have a news section. That was from Comic-Con, so we're going to keep it all Pixar based. And today, we're going to bring you another one of our triple threat matches with the question: who is the more diabolical bad guy? Is it Sid from Toy Story 1, Stinky Pete from Toy Story 2, or Lotso Huggin' Bear from Toy Story 3? I'm going to put this one to you first. Who do you think is the more diabolical bad guy?
I think I can go for more. The thing with Sid, he's a villain to the toys, but as a character, he's not evil. He's just a bit messed up in their head as like a character. And then you've got Stinky Pete, who's pretty bad. He wants to screw him over, but that's for like the selfish personal game. But then you get Lotso, who is built up as the cuddly guy. He's kind of like every toy's granddad. He's their leader. But actually, in his spare time, he's the cynical, naive bastard. And you made the best point, so I'll let you say like why he's going to win this. But I think he just has this incredibly twisted opinion on toys and everything about them. And I think of the three characters, he has the worst motives of them all.
Yeah, I'll agree with that, but I'll go back through the other ones first. Sid, you're right, he's a completely messed up, psychotic kid, but if we're going to go with that theory that he's the dustbin guy from Toy Story 3, we see that he makes it okay and he sort of changes his ways. He was just of that age where he was sort of like a weird Dr. Frankenstein trying to make weird creations. He was just a bit messed up in the head. Stinky Pete, you can kind of see his side of the story. Like he doesn't want Woody to be forgotten. He thinks, he really truly believes that their home in the museum would be the best thing and that they'll be loved forever, and he's sort of playing on his own, how he was neglected as well, which you can kind of see his side of the story. But Lotso, man, I fucking hate this bear who smells of strawberries. You're right, he creates this entire empire. He cozies up to the new toys and pretends that it's all going to be fun, and then we see all the toys getting beaten up by the little kids and thrown around and messed up. He doesn't even care. He's got himself at the top of the hierarchy. He's got all his henchmen with a really creepy baby doll thing. And the one moment that is one of my most hated characters probably in film history, he didn't save the toys from the fiery inferno at the end of Toy Story 3. They saved him on the conveyor belt and he seemed like genuine and he had a turnaround. But no, when he's on that walkway and Woody's pleading to him to push the button to stop the conveyor belt and the fiery inferno, he just runs off. And I'm sorry, but getting strapped to the front of a truck was too easy of a way out for that character. He deserved to like trip back onto the conveyor belt and die in a fiery mess. So for me, who is the more diabolical bad guy? It's Lotso Hugging Bear. I hate this bear, and yeah, he wins for this round.
And I think with him as well, the fact that he's a cuddly bear that smells of like raspberry or something makes it even worse of how evil he is.
Yeah. All because he's a bit cut up because he was replaced, just because he was lost. And, you know, he's just a dick. I just hate the character. He's so hateful and just... Yeah, that I've said everything I can on Lotso Hugging Bear before getting more angry.
Yeah, he's definitely the worst of the three.
So our winner for this week, I think we're in agreement that who is the more diabolical bad guy in the Toy Story series goes to Lotso Hugging Bear. Clear winner this week. So yeah, we'll move on to really our last segment of our main show, which is recommended movie. And George, I believe it's your turn this week to pick a film. So what recommended movie is, we pick a film that ties in vaguely with some link to whatever we reviewed in our main show. So it's got a tie in with Pixar somehow. So what have you got for us this week?
We've mentioned a vague link, and I have several vague links, which makes a strong link, which is 100% of a link to Comic-Con in all honesty. Yeah. So I think this scrapes the barrel of legitimacy. Plus, I think it's the right timing of it. I have decided to go for X-Men Days of Future Past, but the re-released road cut, which has come out this week. I've got a few reasons why. First of all, Bryan Singer directed The Usual Suspects, which was Kevin Spacey's breakthrough film, which led to him being cast in the one and only Bugs Life. So that was my strongest link. And there's a few other minor links in here. Wait there, let me get the list up from yesterday. Hold on. Get ready to cut this.
I believe Incredibles was mentioned.
That's the one, The Incredibles. So you have the Sentinels, which is this big robot just hunting down all the Incredibles, like this is hunting down the X-Men. Then you've also got the fact that Frozone is actually a white guy called Bobby from X-Men. You've also got the fact that Quicksilver, one of the breakouts of Days of Future Past, is actually the kid, and he's actually got blonde hair. There's another link, and he's probably a little shit like him as well. I think that's all the links, but I think it's mainly a Comic-Con time, which we haven't done before, but I think it's the right time. And as we're struggling to get through these films recently, it means we can get it done and dusted out of the way. But it's going to be interesting seeing it, but it does tie in for sure.
And another link, I believe that all the X-Men that wear capes in Days of Future Past die at some point in the film.
Probably. And also, if the schedule is right, this means that... Actually, no, scratch that. I thought this means that you'd get the Inside Out choice, but I will. So
I'm getting Ant-Man, aren't I?
So maybe you can tie Ant-Man in, I don't know, but we'll come up with something. But basically, there's another Pixar film coming up.
Yeah, and just going back to your choice, this is a film that I've really been looking forward to. I've held off buying the Blu-ray of the original Days of Future Past when that came out because I knew that Bryan Singer mentioned that he was going to release an extended version with all the rogue scenes put back in as well as a bunch of other stuff. I love my extended editions, and I think this is going to change the viewing experience of the film. He said the original reason he wanted to cut the scenes out was because it slowed the pace down, so I hope that's not the case. I've seen little clips of a few of the scenes and they look interesting, but it'll be better to see them in the context of the movie and see how that changes the film, if at all. So we could get some neat comparisons in that review. So yeah, I think that's a great choice, and I'm going to have to run to the town and pick that up because I do want to get that, obviously, before Thursday. So... yeah, that was our main show for this week. Be sure to follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/cinemasavvy. We're on Twitter at twitter.com/cinema_savvy, as well as on letterboxd.com twitter.com/cinema_savvy. So be sure to return to our channel on Thursday, where we'll have our review for X-Men Days of Future Past, the Rogue Cut. And then join us again on Monday for one of the big new releases, which will be our Ant-Man review. So until then, thanks for listening.